All right, we're going to get started. I decided not to do slides. I have some notes that I will deliver to anyone who was invited to the call, and then you can add your own information. I think slides are sometimes boring. Notes are more effective. So tonight's town hall is called Armcare. Okay. And basically, Armcare has turned into a end all be all or this big inclusive term, and it really has three definitions. It used to have just kind of one definition, which was a sports medicine definition. And arm care really had to do with what happened after we threw. So that would be, ice, heat, massage, stretching, bandaging, whatever went on after a pitcher threw. But now that also includes training, velocity training, strength building, and mechanical training. So when someone talks arm care, it has many different definitions, not just necessarily the definition that I grew up as a sports medicine physical therapist. So let's take these kind of one by one. Okay. So a sports medicine version now, what happens after someone throws? Well, for years we've seen the pitcher with the ace bandages and the ice on the shoulder and the elbow. I think that may still have its place. However, we have to really think what ice does, right? Ice applied to specific joints decreases blood flow to the area, which would essentially allegedly decrease the healing to the area, right? If we're limiting blood flow, that's how our tissues heal. So I'm sure we've all seen the fad now where crazy people are jumping in tubs of ice. Okay, that is a completely different, not a completely different uh, cooling element where we're cooling our core and causing our body to go into hypothermia, which then the body sends out like essentially life-saving proteins, I believe called black proteins or brown proteins or something like that, which has a very good therapeutic effect on the body. Not my cup of tea personally, um, but that's what's happening out there. So um, I don't know too many pitchers that are coming off the mound and jumping into an ice bath. What I would do now is kind of what is called a contrast bath. For years in physical therapy, a contrast bath would be something we would do to someone who's got chronic swelling. Like let's say, for instance, we had a knee replacement and we pressed on someone's shin and our thumb would leave a dent. Okay, that's called pitting edema. We would attack that a few ways. One with compression, massage, and then with a contrast bath, which we would heat the area first to get that swelling more liquefied, and then we would ice right after to cool it down. For pitchers, I like to do just the opposite in a contrast bath. I like to ice it immediately, right? So to calm down any kind of inflammation, elbow and shoulder, and then warm it back up. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean heat, although we could. It could be a hot shower. That could mean range of motion, stability exercises, range of motion exercises, anything to keep that arm moving. Uh, we need to have full range of motion, elbow, shoulder, to be able to throw again. So that would be one thing that I would say to coaches is do that kind of reverse contrast bath. I've had a lot of good luck with that. Now, the second definition, training, strength, velocity building. Okay. We could certainly be here for hours. I could pick up my cell phone here and look at different velocity building programs. Although I do want to call your attention to something on Facebook called, I think it's 212. Let's see if I can find it. 212 Athletics, where someone like me, physical therapist, strength guy, just did a parody on all of these programs, and it's like belly laughter what he's doing. Because some of them are nuts, some of them are absolutely crazy. We can get into that more as we go along. Um, but that has been one, Armcare has now taken that definition of strength training as a second definition. And his third definition is really mechanical training, neurological sequencing, good mechanics, bad mechanics. The problem with mechanics is that everyone has an opinion, what's good, what's bad. I like to use a little known science called kinesiology. I'm being facetious. When we talk about mechanics, I want the body to move kinesiologically correct when we're throwing baseballs, footballs, anything. That's going to keep our arm healthy. All right. So those are pretty much the three catch-all, broad-based definitions of arm care. Okay. So again, sports medicine, post throwing, a performance based, and then a mechanical based. Those will be the three kind of definitions that I see out there in the world. So really quickly, when we talk about the anatomy and what we're looking at, there are two big focuses of anatomy. One is our ulnar collateral ligament, that is on the medial side or pinky side of our elbow, that connects the essential humerus to the forearm. Okay, sometimes called the flexor tendon, the flexor mass. That is the Tommy John area of where stress comes through the elbow, and that is what is fixed. That area is repaired when someone has Tommy John surgery. Now, I see and really specialize in the younger guys, the 11 to 15-year-olds, and they have growth plates. I just saw a kid in my office the other day who had injuries to two growth plates in his elbow, one at his elbow and one on the medial side. Now, a growth plate is essentially the end of the bone isn't full of calcium. Okay, it has more cartilaginous. Say that 10 times fast. It's soft. It's not fully grown yet, and an injury to that area is almost could be career threatening at that point. We have what's called avulsion fractures, where the tendon, believe it or not, is actually stronger than the bone and can literally rip it right off the bone. And I've seen those, and those are really bad. Okay. The other is our rotator cuff. That's a meshing together of four muscles in our shoulder that has to do with strength and stability. Our shoulder doesn't really have ligaments per se. There's one in kind of the front, but really our shoulder is held together by a piece of connective tissue called your labrum, and then a meshing together of four muscles called your rotator cuff, and highly depends on the muscles of your scapula to move correctly. And we'll get into that in a little bit. So what are the current trends? Well, it really has a large focus to velocity, 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 velocity. How hard can we throw it? Doesn't matter where it goes, but we're looking at how hard can we throw it. Now, with this jump in velocity, the jump in injuries has been through the roof, enormous, through the roof. I believe in 2022, there were more Major League Baseball pitchers on the disabled list than there were total injuries in the entire National Football League. And it wasn't even close. It was almost 2-1. That's just pitchers. Okay. So this quest for velocity has really gotten out of hand. And then in conjunction with social media, the rise of adolescent injuries is just exponentially high. So with that focus on velocity, there's been a large focus, and people will talk about arm strength, that everything is cured with arm strength. You hurt your arm because it wasn't strong enough. Okay. So our arm moves at the end of a kinematic sequence, right? It's the last thing that moves. And there's another therapist on the line, and we are not related, by the way. But he will tell you, like everything else, is that the arm is working at that point to slow down, what we call eccentrically, meaning that it's trying to stay locked into the body so it doesn't fly off into the front row and kill the guy in the front row. So I'm always questioning about some of these rotator cuff specific exercises, why we are strengthening the brakes. And then, of course, I'll get back, well, in order to strengthen the brakes, that makes us go faster. Of course, I'll ask for what proof they have of that phenomenon or hypothesis, and that never comes. So arm strength as a component, as a sole component, is not the answer to keeping an arm healthy. If so, Hulk Hogan and Arnold Schwarzenegger would be on tap for a Cy Young every year. So then we move on to mechanics, and there is a lot there when we talk about mechanics. I call alphabet soup the Y, the M, the T, the W, the X, the Y, the Z, made famous by two players whose careers ended with mounting injuries in Steven Strasberg and Mark Pryor. Two people you don't want to emulate. Two people who had these M, W, Y, X, Z arm positions, right? Which made their arm late or hanging behind them, and all the stress on the medial component of the elbow. But those are teaches. Someone's actually teaching those positions. If anyone has children, no little kid has ever picked up a ball to throw it and gotten in a reverse M or W position. It just doesn't happen. Okay. They pick the ball and throw it like a pie or like a football. You've never seen Tom Brady get into a position like that to throw the ball 70 yards. It doesn't happen. I'm not sure where it came from in the baseball realm, but it is extremely dangerous. Pick any person who has had Tommy John surgery or injuries to their shoulder or elbow, rewind the tape, and you're going to see someone guaranteed palm down, elbow above the shoulder, and in some kind of crazy MTW type position. And then the last mechanical thing that's being taught that is really kind of puzzlesome is purposely dragging the back foot. So people are actually teaching pitchers to come down the mound and then drag the back foot. So just the word drag and velocity don't go together, right? Like, how fast can our car go with the brakes on? They're just mismatched. Dragging your back toe actually inhibits your ability to turn your hips, to turn your upper body in, and make your arm get into a proper slot. So I'm not really sure why that is being taught, but it is. So bad mechanics, in my opinion, is the number one cause of injury out there by far. So who am I? Well, quick introduction. My name is Dr. Kevin McGovern. I am a physical therapist for about 30 years now. And I have a personal story that goes along with my Velocity RX program. Back in 1986, while playing in a pickup basketball game at the YMCA in a small town in Connecticut, some ding dong decided it'd be a good idea to push me in the back when I went up for a layup. I came down and I decimated my right knee, ACL, MCL, cartilage. At that point, I still had growth plates. So they fixed the meniscus, and I didn't get the ACL fixed until 1996. So I wore a brace played basketball all the time and literally wore my knee out. But that essentially ended any kind of hopes of playing baseball anywhere in college because um, at that time I had no idea what proper movement looked like and lost a bunch of velocity. So fast forward to getting out of college, I decided it'd be a good idea to pick up baseball again. And in the infield one day back in, I think it was 96 or 97, I made that throw that everybody does from first to third base, right? That no one actually ever does, and I've never actually seen it in a real game. And I felt this crunch in my elbow, and I knew right away this wasn't good. So that night, ended up with a half golf ball sized lump on my medial elbow. Long story short, MRI, doctor visit. Yep, you've torn your ulnar collateral ligament. All right, what do we do? Well, we need to repair it. Okay, I've got like $60,000 in student loans. I just started this job. I believe I need two hands to be a physical therapist. How long am I going to be laid up where I can't use my other arm? Oh, at least 4 or 5 months. Yeah, that's not going to work. So, did a lot of research and started rehabbing on my own, had colleagues work on it, and eventually got my elbow, I could straighten it, I could move it, and had no pain. And then a year later, I decided that it would be a great idea if I decided to play baseball again. So I started to essentially teach myself how to throw without injuring or hurting the medial component of my elbow. And the biggest revelation I had is I need to throw downhill, right? We always hear everyone say, throw downhill, throw downhill. What does that actually mean, throw downhill? Well, it really means throw with our friend Sir Isaac Newton, that I'm not accelerating my arm until it's past noon on the clock and it's going downhill in a gravity assisted position. So, um, Velocity RX was born, and I pitched from 1997 until 2013 or 14. I was in my mid 40s when I stopped pitching at a pretty decent level. Not a professional level. I was never that good, but I also in an amateur level, we don't have 5 days off between starts. We have like 7 minutes, especially for a tournament. So Velocity RX was born. Soon after that, I got well, actually, and so I started seeing baseball players in my practice, and back in 2005, I got a call from an independent team in Nashua, New Hampshire, which was managed by Butch Hobson at the time, that they're in desperate need of a physical therapist trainer. So I was like, sure. So I spent 2 years as their trainer, and at the time, they had a tremendous roster of pitchers. They had three guys who had major league time, and they had two guys who were drafted in the first round, Jeff Getz and Dan Reichert, who were, I believe in 1997, were drafted 6 and 7 or 5 and 6. So I was able then to see, and all of them are injured, which just like blew my mind. They're out of baseball because they're injured, right? This is my first like realization, like that baseball pitchers on the major league level are really just cattle. It's like kind of the Yellowstone Ranch. So I was like, hey, do you mind bringing in your, you know, pitching guideline you got from major league teams? Oh, yeah. I think I have like 12 somewhere. The Yankees, the Orioles, the Dodgers. And looking through this, I became absolutely horrified. Like, oh my God, I would never in a million years give a shoulder patient, elbow patient pitcher this exercise ever. And I saw a lot of that over and over and over again. Exercises that are just completely do not do ever. And these guys are doing it and they never got back to playing again, pitching. And now we know why. So that's a few tidbits on me. So moving on, 13. No, not today's date. That is the number, the age when most kids stop playing baseball. 13 by most studies. Now, some has to do with that baseball is boring to some and they play other sports. But a large component has to do with injury, and in my humble opinion, has to do with performance and puberty. Meaning, in August when we turn on the Little League World Series, and little Johnny is 5'1", and next year, school time or the year after, on a bigger field, little Johnny's now 5'10" and 210. That he's hit his growth spurt, gone to a bigger field, and his body has no idea how to adapt to that, especially if he is a pitcher of any kind. And two things happen. One, either he is not performing well and kids his age are blowing by him, or he's hurt, because how you coach someone at 5'1" and when they're 5'10" is totally different. And that leads to my next point. Athletic movement has to start with functional movement. Okay. And what does that mean? We need a base of movement, right? We're not going to build a house on a foundation that's rocking. Kids that come to my office, I'm constantly seeing, oh, I squat 310, I deadlift 305. And then I ask them to do a basic squat and I can push them over with one finger because they're out of sequence. They're not doing it properly. But the human body is an amazing tool. It will always do what you tell it to do, regardless of its consequences. It's like me, it's like a thick-headed Irishman. It's just going to plow through and do it. So a lot of injuries I see have to do with the training. Okay. We train for two reasons and two reasons only. One is to increase performance, and two is to stay healthy. So let's apply that. Okay. Let's just go to my favorite hometown team. No, sorry, not the Boston Red Sox, for those on the call from Massachusetts. We're going to go south to the South Bronx, and we're going to look at the New York Yankees, okay, who have the highest injury rate in all of baseball and have for God knows how long. In 2022, in a week span, I think 6 days, the New York Yankees had an elbow fracture and two ulnar collateral ligament tears in a week. Okay. They signed Juan Soto and will end up paying him an ungodly amount of money because their star center fielder, Jason Dominguez, played 5 games on the pro level last year and is out. Why is he out? Because he had needed Tommy John surgery. Have you ever heard? I mean, I can't even think of 15 or 20 years ago having position players blowing out their elbow. It's just unheard of. And, I grew up in a time of Dave Parker, Bo Jackson, Jim Rice, Willie Stargell, guys that had cannons for arms. I don't see that reciprocating nowadays. I mean, it's rare to have somebody throw from their outfield position to home plate on the fly. It just doesn't happen. So with all of the training, okay, if we go back to, we train for two purposes: one, to stay healthy, more importantly, and two, to increase performance. What's happening, right? The injury rate is going through the roof for position players as well, and the performance is down, right? Take any baseball card from any baseball player pre 2015 and look at it. And you will see alarming numbers that you will never see in today's game. Innings pitched, 225, 230, 300. complete games, 4, 5, 6. You flip over and look at Jim Palmer's baseball card, that will blow your mind. Complete games, 16. Innings pitched, 330 for years in a row. So if this quest for velocity or whatever it is happening, okay, there's a huge disconnect in training, okay, because, and I still don't think, yes, there might be more guys that throw harder, but Nolan Ryan threw pretty hard. Randy Johnson threw pretty hard. Bob Gibson threw pretty hard. Mariano Rivera threw pretty hard. So there's certainly people who threw hard, okay? There might be more people that threw hard, but they're out of baseball. They're having multiple surgeries, and their shelf life is now shorter than an NFL running back. And the last time I looked, no one was trying to run out and tackle the pitcher. So something is drastically wrong with what is happening out there. And my mission is to save 1 million arms. Okay. So I tell my parents and my young kids, look, you are never, I don't care how good you are never, ever, 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 ever going to get a college scholarship at 13, ever. But you could blow your arm out and blow the chances of getting anything by the time you're 18. Okay. There is way more opportunity now to play college baseball than there ever has been before. And people could get money. Okay. Now, that money can come academically, that can come athletically, but you can get money to play a sport on the college level. Okay. Especially if you can pitch and throw rather well, and especially if you're left-handed. Okay. Now, I have heard from college coaches that have been on my podcast that your high school player is last in line in the recruiting process. Last. Okay. Number one is the portal. Number two is JUCO. And last is the high school athlete. There's no way they're going to take you with any sort of arm injury. No way. When they have all these players that they can, that they can choose from, why are they going to get someone? Obviously, if you're throwing 99 miles an hour, it doesn't matter how many scars you have in your elbow, but not everyone does that. But your average run-of-the-mill kid who wants to succeed in high school, play Division II, play Division III, NAIA, they're not coming to look for you. You have got to stay healthy. And in order to stay healthy, in my opinion, you have to train correctly, wisely, with a purpose. I'm doing this exercise for this reason. And after you're done that exercise, there better be a result. Baseball is glorifying negative results. Literally, there's no way in the world you would be satisfied if you hired a painter and you came home and your shingles were off, half the house was painted, the roof was collapsed. But yet today, people are really satisfied with the complete lack of results. Like the kid with the growth plate, he's working with a pitching coach who is pretty well known in the industry and pretty high up. What are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And it's insanity out there. So my thought to parents again is there has to be a plan. There has to be testing. There has to be movement testing. There has to be mechanical testing before you go and do anything to add weight, resistance, force, whatever. You have to have a sound foundation before you add to that with any kind of resistance, speed, whatever. And that is the missing link. I don't see that happening. I see cringeworthy drills. Okay. I see running guns. I see front flips. Okay. I see the radar gun, but no one runs from center field to throw the ball to home plate. This is not how the movement happens. And the guys I see on social media that are doing it right are shunned, okay? Or they're made fun of, okay? Because, you know, social media is really about negative result and negativism, if that's even a word. So that's my 2 cents on that. So getting back to movement, okay, again, testing. Not all players are the same. What you do to player A can be different for player B. Okay. Um, we want to get the arm, the body moving in a gravity assisted position to get that arm moving downhill. We want to recruit as many muscles as we can to help the fight. Okay. Glutes, back extensors, scapular depressors, groin, hamstring, all should be involved in the pitching motion. Want to use the big muscles. Now, one key kinesiological law that I see broken constantly. Okay. For everyone on this call, I want to let you know that I have the very first picture of your children. Very first one. I don't know if you knew that. I took it from the hospital. I'm going to show you now I have it. Okay. You can see that. Let's see. There it is. The very first picture. The ultrasound. A little amoeba looking thing. Okay. The head and the spinal cord. That's where we start. The arms and legs grow in and develop after. And that's how we have to move from proximal to distal, meaning that everything starts at the core and moves out in the periphery. Okay. So what does that mean for pitching? Meaning I'm turning my core and the last thing that is moving is my arm. If I start my arm from center field, I might as well start the egg timer on its ability to stay healthy. It has to move last in the neurological or kinematic sequence, whatever you want to call it. So, a couple of things for those on this call or who were invited to the call. This comes with a free coaching call. We can schedule that. I can get on with you and your kid, and we can talk about his needs and how I can get him to throw with more velocity, better command, and bulletproof his arm. Okay. Minimum gains in velocity are 3 to 5 miles an hour. I can do that in my sleep. I can do that just by fixing functional movement. That's easy. I've done that in a weekend. But you take someone from 72 to 77, they just went from JV to varsity. Take them from 77 to 82, they just went from high school to playing Division 3. Take them from 82 to 87, now they're playing Division 2 and Division 1. That's the difference. But all of that has to start with correct functional movement. So that's all my time. I don't want to bore you anymore. I will add to these notes. I will send these notes out for you. If anyone is on the line and wants to unmute and has any questions, by all means, you can ask them now. All right, everyone's shy. No problem. This one live on Facebook, so hopefully you'll get the recording out. And thank you for attending on a late hour on a Thursday. I appreciate your time and attention, and hope to see you again soon. Thanks for listening.